same problem with people sitting on the rec board, because the rec board was so important and so hard to get a hold of that you know, you needed that time on there. And it kept on going, and the person stayed on again because there were so many important things coming up. And now we're seeing the same thing here. If we're not gonna rotate, don't rotate. We shouldn't allow nonprofits and the organizations that we sit on to try to help dictate who stays on that committee. And I know there was a lot of time vested, Brian, I know that, but it doesn't negate the fact that we as counselors, we as adults, all said yes to the procedure and voted and voted for it. And now, because it didn't go the way that you wanted, it went to municipal affairs because crying foul. And I just think, I'm just disappointed. Yeah, we should have done it differently. Yes, in the future we should know to do it differently. But this isn't just about procedure. You can't convince me otherwise. This is because I wanted to be on this committee and now I'm off of this committee, and that's not right, and that's not fair, or it doesn't suit me. Maybe I'm being harsh, but if we have to do the vote, we do the vote. We have to pull the hat, we pull the hat. But this wasn't just about procedure.
Councillor Rose, thank you.
I agree with you. It's not just about procedure. It's about fairness, but it's also about following our procedures and all the way through. And if we're going to get into a little bit of a discussion, and I'm disappointed, Michael, that that's the take that you're presenting, that the discussion, and I know there has been past discussion about other committees, including recreation, but there's also a procedure in our bylaw that says that we're supposed to meet with the mayor annually. We're supposed to discuss the committees that we would like to be on, and we're supposed to have that opportunity for that communication, and then decisions are supposed to be made that sort of best suit the situation. We can read the words. The mayor shall, after consulting with each councillor and by using the mayor's best judgment, create a list of appointments, recommendations, and bring that summary to the organizational meeting for ratification. Now, the two issues that you're bringing up, they're not other councillors having discussions or problems, or they're all the committees that the mayor wanted to sit on, right? So recreation was the very first committee that I asked to sit on my very first council meeting in when we got elected in November. I did have one conversation with her that I initiated, went and sat down, discussed what I wanted to do, said that this one was really important to me, gave her all the reasons, came to this meeting, saw my name was scratched out. I was told that it was on there, that the CIO had provided it, and that she had put her own on there, and for 3 years had chose to be on that committee each time I asked for first choice. So I didn't make it a big deal until the end, and I said, you know, enough. Like, that's 3 times in a row. And we were told at the very first meeting that you're here to represent the people of the community. You're here to try to bring new ideas and bring things forward that you know, you share as maybe you have other skill sets that you can bring forward, right? Never had the opportunity to do that, but I never actually was invited for a meeting ever. And every other year, I took a look at the CAO's recommendations. The CAO's recommendations were always changed, and we just approved with the mayor's recommendations. But our procedure isn't being followed there because we're not meeting with the mayor ahead of time. She's just sort of deciding who gets to go where. Same sort of situation here, to the point where Councillor Panasic now doesn't get on any of the committees that he asked to go. His last year at council, he's still working on issues with housing. He's working with things on intermunicipal, didn't get the opportunity to go on any committees, didn't have the meeting with the mayor. The recommendations from our CAO was that he was going to be on it. Okay. So I'm really disappointed. Yeah, sorry, but this is, like you say, making us feel like we're making a big deal. You guys knew that night that this was being done poorly, that there was a mistake. And I feel bad because, yes, I accepted the role of chair, and I know there's a lot of discussion about this whole chair position as well, right? So we won't go into that, but it isn't just for educational purposes.
Okay.
But unfortunately, I spent that whole year trying to do the best that I could. And instead of getting some advice somewhere, I usually got reprimanded. To the point where that meeting, you could have, anybody who knew the procedure could have said, you know what, when we had the last tie, we had a tiebreaker. That was the procedure. I saw Mr. Martinson trying his hardest to make sure that it was fairly done, right? So after that meeting, I had an aha moment. I thought, oh my goodness, it was a tie. It wasn't a defeated motion. That's the way it should have been handled, and any one of us could have brought that to the table. Nobody did. So afterwards, I thought it was fair that I, because I was the chair and made that mistake, should have brought that forward. I called municipal affairs. They said, nope, this is what you guys should have done, and this is what you guys can do.
Okay.
So in the interest of fairness, I wanted to bring that forward.
All right. I would like to respond, and I don't like doing this, but you had made a point of saying that you asked for 3 times. You did not ask for 3 times. I did not sit on the Recreation Board. Councillor Emter and Councillor Carrier also sat on the Recreation Board, so it was not 3 years in a row, and it was only because one quit and the other also quit that I did step forward because I was the alternate and sit on it. So don't say that I sat there for 3 years. I did not sit there for 3 years. And the other item is consultation does not mean I have to phone everybody and say, well, what do you think? Are you okay with this or whatever? I send out those things. I ask for you to give me which ones do you want to sit on. But you should also know that the rotation is very important. That sitting on a board does not mean you own that position. So I'm moving on because I think there are other people that may wish to respond to this. Councillor Gilroy, do you have anything you would like to say?
I think I partially said it, that we went through, as far as I was concerned, a democratic process. I asked questions before we actually did the voting. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but I asked to make sure I knew what was happening. And then we dealt with it, and then we passed the minutes, and if there was a problem at that point, it probably should have been brought up, or it should have been asked to be separated from the package of appointments. Personally, I'm not surprised that this is being brought up, and I'm not going to bring out other past ones that I've dealt with while being on council for my short time, which were passed and then reversed because someone didn't like the outcome. So I'm not going to get into that. If you want to vote, vote.
Councillor Courtley, do you have anything you would like to add to the discussion, relevant to the discussion?
No, I'm good.
I'm good right now, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Panasic, would you like to add anything?
Yes. I'd like to address Michael's stuff. Number one, Michael, I didn't put this on here, just so that you know.
Okay.
Okay? I did not put it on here for this purpose at all. Okay?
Yeah.
He didn't even know.
I did not even know until it was in the package, to be quite honest. However, you made a point that we all sort of knew where this was going, and we all went into it. Well, before we had this vote, there was the break, and we were talking with Mr. Martinson and those that were around and said, okay, what happens if it's a tie? And Brian said, at first, he said, well, because it's a motion, then I would get in. And then he said, well, no, then I think it's, the mayor would get in because it's defeated. And I said, well, what motion is it? So I questioned it at that time. I said, that doesn't make sense. I said, well, why is that? What motion are we defeating?
Exactly.
And he said, well, it's the motion of this. And he went around it. And I said, well, you know what? He didn't really know the way to address it. And what motion were we defeated?
Right.
It wasn't clear at that time. He couldn't explain it to me. He did give an explanation that didn't make any sense to me at that time. And I just said, okay, you've got to justify this in some way to make it work. So I can live with that, either, which way you go. Yeah. And you know what? I'm okay with not being on the board. I really am. I've moved on. Right? I have. But I'm just saying that it's, it wasn't handled properly, and we need to adjust our bylaws, our procedural bylaws, so this doesn't happen again. Because it's the same thing we did with call the question. Nobody knows the answer, but we didn't want to change our bylaws. This same thing is going to happen again if we don't adjust our bylaws to be properly written out. And that's the issue here.
All right,
So-
so we have enough discussion on it, I think we all understand. The motion is, what is the motion we are voting on?
That council completes the procedure for tiebreaker as per advice from Municipal Affairs and following the Local Authorities Election Act procedure for candidates who receive the same amount of votes and chosen to appoint the candidate as indicated above.
Okay, so
Can I ask
you
one
vote,
question?
yes?
So, Terry, the rules that we found out from municipal affairs, is it to vote on whether we, on this motion, or is it just that we did not follow the procedures and we're supposed to just do a tiebreaker? I'm unclear on that. Because I know when they came back with what we did wrong with Brian Martinson's appointment, they just said, oh, you have to sign this form, and that was it. It wasn't like it was a motion, we didn't make any changes, right?
The impression I got from being third party to the conversations was that it can be handled either way. Either a second motion can be made now, because it should have been made at the time, and if tied, then we go through this process. Or, depending what you guys figure, if it should still have been, a motion should have been made, but you're gonna accept the tiebreaker by the two names. Either process, I understand, would rectify it according to what municipal affairs said. That's my understanding. But, I guess I'm getting this third hand myself, so.
So if we move, if we carry, to complete this procedure, then we move to the procedure, the tiebreaker.
Yes.
And if the motion is defeated, then that's the end of the issue.
According to I gather the intent from municipal affairs is that most motions and meetings they're tied, they're defeated automatically. But in the case of appointments, same as elections, you can't have it defeated. For example, at your regular elections, if there's a tie between the residents voted 403 to one person, 403 to the other person, you have to have a tiebreaker. And the same type of situation happens with appointments, you have to have a tiebreaker, you can't have it defeated.
You know what, I'll make this easy and I'll just withdraw that I don't want to go on Hard River Housing. Okay, I'll make that easy. I don't want to fight over this, it's not my intention, but we didn't follow the proper procedure. Nobody mentioned this. It's an issue, and we ran into this several times because our procedures aren't clear and nobody seems to know it until after the fact. That, oh, this is what we should have been doing with call the question now, but it was never handled that way, so there's issues.
I would have got you a t-shirt.
Okay.
Just to make a comment, this is one of those things where I think most municipalities would have had, would not have known this particular one, including the CAO, because normally we follow the MGA. As CAOs, that is our mandate, we follow the MGA. Number one and only rule. The Local Authorities Elections Act is usually something we follow just at election time. And I don't.
It's not in the MGA?
The Local Authorities Elections Act is a separate act from the Municipal Government Act, totally separate.
Okay.
It's not part of the MGA. So that one is what's followed for elections. In this case, because this was not an election, I think a lot of municipal administrators would have fallen back on the idea that we follow the MGA. It's not the MGA. Therefore, I don't think too many of them would have known to go to the Elections Act for appointments.
You know, and I think everybody's intent was to just have it done as fairly as possible, and that was my intention bringing it back, was because I didn't feel that it was completed fairly. That was municipal affairs recommendation, is to just complete the procedure, and then that would, you giving everybody that fair opportunity.
But I do agree with Council Canasic that we could revamp the bylaw, and I will tweak it myself and pass it to you guys as soon as I do so.
So the motion is withdrawn and
Put it as another one for the 24th. Bylaw change.
I
I'm gonna make a motion
Yes?
that administration revise the procedural bylaw to clarify the tie process and call the question.
The type process for
For tie
appointments,
process
for appointments. Okay, I'll go with that one.
But not the candidate.
Well, this is only about appointments, so it needs to be that,
Committee appointments.
and to put it on the agenda for the next bylaw, so we can get it finished with. The bylaw meeting in a couple months. Okay. Next one.
Okay, clarify the procedural bylaw for the process for tie process, and what is the other part?
Call the
And
question.
Call the question.
All in favor? Carried. Okay. Next item is municipal development. No, it's, municipal. That is your addendum. 5B7. We have a motion. Councillor Long?
That council proclaimed November 13th, November 13th to November 19th, 2016 as Métis Week in High Prairie, and advertising proclamation on social media website and our electronic sign.
I'll speak to this because I asked for it to be put on the agenda. I received an email from Northland School Division, and in their newsletter, they, had a small blurb about Metis Nation, Metis Week, and they click on the expand it, and Edmonton and Calgary are doing many things. They are doing a public proclamation, they are having a lunch at the library, they're having a screening of a documentary film, they're really going all out. And I'm thinking that, in fact, I did call the Rupert's Land here and ask what they were doing, and they're having a Bannock lunch on, I think it's Thursday of that week. And the High Prairie Native Friendship, or the High Prairie Friendship Center is not doing anything because the Elders Bank is taking up too much of their time. But I think it's important that we do this proclamation this year, and perhaps next year, if Métis Nation of Alberta Region 5 gets their act together a bit better, we could be doing something at this end of the lake, because we do have a large Indigenous population of Métis. So this, I think, is the very least we can do at this time. Any other comments? Any other questions? All in favor? Motion's carried. The next item is senior games. Could I get a motion, please? Councillor Gilroy?
Since this is actually my item, I make the motion that council direct administration to write a letter of support to the Mighty Peace Sports and Recreation Association Zone 8 to aid in the grant application for the 2017 Alberta 55 Plus Provincial Fall Games. And if you'd like to know why, I can give you, well, basically I was at the meeting for the people who were looking at sponsoring or having the Alberta 55 Plus Provincial Fall Games here, attended by the county as well. The county grant person was actually giving all sorts of grant ideas to them. This is one of them. And the provincial body for the Alberta 55 Plus Games basically said to zoning the games will be held in High Prairie next year, September 15th to 17th. If you if you have the financing. They're not asking us for any money. The only thing I did say I would bring to council later on, after everything was approved, was the ability to borrow one office
in the other wing for 3 days just to compile statistics to deal with the administrative work. Other than that, it's costing us nothing but ink to write a nice letter saying that we want them here, and it will affect between 250 and 650 participants.
Do we have the rooms, the hotel rooms available?
They have said that it's not a problem, according to the discussions that we had there. I asked that particular question, and they said that that's not going to be a problem with the way it's being handled.
Okay, so are these the actual provincial games, or are they only for our zone?
They are provincial games, however, it's a smaller scale. As you can see in the email, it's 11 events. They've already got the venues set up for where they're going to be. From the banquet right on, they had a wonderful, if I would have more notice than receiving this morning, I could have had a snapshot of their, of all the information they had. I could have presented to council. They had a budget set out of what they're charging per person, accommodation, because what they're also including is, when we think of accommodation, we think hotel rooms. Well, they include campers in campgrounds such as the Elks Campground, which is a rather large one. And so we also suggested that if our particular campsite was available, we might be looking at that since it's early September as well. So there's a number of varieties in there. They'd even go as far as going to even camp near Inelda. So the region, they believe, can sustain the number of hotel rooms that they would require, or accommodation they would require.
If we give you this letter of support, are we bound to have the games?
Once again, when they get all the funding in, the Zone 8 is in charge. They will do all the administrative work. They are the ones who will be contracting with the rec board, and we did have a rec board representative there, who's part of the committee there. They will be contacting the Elks Club and the other organizations involved. They do all of that, and they are pretty much sure that they are going to have it after all the grants have come in, and they've got further grants. So the county is very much trying every way possible to get that here.
The only reason I sound skeptical is I have seen the Alberta Seniors Package. It was presented in previous years here, and there was no way that we could do it by ourselves. And in fact, even Westlock, when they did, but maybe they did the Alberta Summer Games, which is a different maybe than the Alberta Fall Games, because the Summer Games, they had to use Barhead, Westlock, and I think they had another community in there.
I think the spring and fall sessions you can handle in smaller communities. I think that's part of it. Like there's less events, so there's less participants. But you are right. If we give a letter of support, they're at that point that it's approved. They're told you guys can have and host the games as long as you can get the community support. If you get the community support, then you're yours.
Councillor Panasi?
I'm confused also because they were supposed to be holding the winter games this year. They did not run the winter games because they had no funding for them. Like
Sports people, like
not here. It was just the Alberta 55 winter games, and apparently the government pulled their funding for that. And I only know that because I was supposed to go and play hockey with them, right? So
You're not that old.
no, I'm not. I was gonna sneak in. Anyways, I was told, and I don't know if this is true or not, that they were then going to try and run one set of games in the fall, and they were gonna combine summer and winter. So you would have the winter events and you'd have some of the summer events. Obviously, some of the winter events like skiing probably wouldn't fly. but everything else they were gonna try to combine is what I was told. So I'm just going, this doesn't include some of those other events, there's no, where's the track and field, where's the hockey, where's the other stuff, where's those other, the tennis isn't showing, you know, all of those other events aren't in here, so where are they? And what's happening to it?
Councillor Gilroy.
I happen to find in my briefcase the information of the Alberta 55 Plus High Prairie Games budget draft, and the facilities are looking at renting the Elks Hall and Stampede Ground for a for banquet, and Elda Bowling Alley for the bowling, the Legion Hall for a special event, the Aquatic Center for swimming. The senior center will be used for a couple of indoor games as well. The JC Park for outside ones. The ice pads where they can do 2 events at the same time. So they've actually got costs for the whole thing. The registration is basically, they're charging $65 a person. For 300 people, it's roughly $20,000, and I believe it's going to be unfunded is $60 per person, and they figure that they can get that in the multiple grants between what the grants that the grant officer out of the county has given them, as well as other potentials and just to let you know as well, as much as possible, I have been assured that the first person to, or the first companies approached for any things like printing T-shirts or participant handbooks, things like that, will all be local businesses.
So what's the concern with this council? Like, it seems to be that
Well, I'm not sure if we can actually, as a
just not being
community,
able to host the.
put this on to the extent that they're asking, but then again, I don't see how many volunteers we're being asked to supply.
Should we maybe ask for more information?
We can't. They have a very big, very tight.
I've got it here too. 50 volunteers, and actually it's the entire zone that has to provide the volunteers. Judges for things like the arts and creative writing will be provincially, but they try to get them locally as well. And so they've already thought of the volunteer status, and they've already got plans for those volunteers. They've thought out the accommodation very well.
I know they've approached recreation and they're helping in
Yes,
some capacity.
recreation. Lori was there at the meeting, giving references and quotes and that.
So if we don't get the grant, we don't have to do it. Is that part of it?
This is one of a number of grants, but it's the grant that's due on the 15th, and that's why it was brought here. So we do not have to fill out any grant papers. We just give a little letter of affirmation that we believe that this would be a great place to hold the games, and we sort of are in support of their bid to do the games.
Administration?
I'm of the understanding that we don't have to do anything except give a letter of support to them, and they're taking care of everything. That's my understanding.
Any other comments then? Councillor Court?
I don't know, I think our facilities can handle it.
Okay.
I do, I think so. As far as timing and stuff, it's probably, you know, it's in a respectable time, I guess. And, I think it's positive to bring a lot of people in our community, spending a lot of money, other than the wild parties that these guys will probably be having. It'll be crazy, but I think it's great. I think it's awesome.
Councillor Panasek?
I agree, I think it's a great thing of bringing people in. I'm just so surprised that this organization picked High Prairie. Where are they based out of? And why did
High
they
Prairie
pick
went
it?
to them, right, and put in
Who from High Prairie?
Golden Age Club, like
Golden
the.
Age.
Oh, the Golden Age.
yeah.
one.
Mayor-
That's
Mary's
it.
Mary
the-
Zablotnik, for the
Yes.
president of the Golden Age Club, is the one that is.
President of
is-
Zone 8 for that too as well.
But she's the president of the Golden Age Club.
Yep,
so-
she's,
So they wanted to host the game, so they put in a bid, or they have discussion about hosting the game.
Okay.
But when you look at the games, it's like, it's a smaller amount
Yeah,
of
it's
games, and
very
it's games
small.
that we could probably handle.
There's probably, we can accommodate whist, euchre, and bridge, right?
I've been on euchre.
Yeah.
I've been on
Councillor
euchre
Corrigan.
too. Actually, you did jog my memory, cause at the rec board, she had a letter
Right.
requesting for support, that she wanted to go and apply for this, and ask for support from the rec board, the administration, and help her with, with a little bit of the paperwork and filling out the forms and stuff. I think Lori actually helped her with that, and she asked for that help, and if she did this, if we'd be able to support her in that way, so, it was Mary that initiated all
So
that.
it sounds like it's well underway and very
Very well
organized
organized.
thus far, so.
Well, if you have your seniors behind you, I'm happy to hear that someone else is more involved than they're expecting us to be.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
we have very minimal involvement. They are,
I
All right,
want in
so,
on euchre though.
all in favor of directing the administration, is that what the
Yeah,
motion
for a
was?
letter of support.
Correct.
Or,
So in there, it does say direct the
Yep.
administration to provide?
Yep.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. Next item is municipal development plan, MVP. Can I have a motion? And I need separate motions. Councillor Canal?
I'll make a motion that council give first reading to bylaw 13/2016 on the safe day of November 2016.
And is there any discussion or any questions or anything on this, Councillor? Yes?
The map that was handed out to you, separately, the reason it was handed out that when I went over this, I noticed that there was a couple of the commercial vacant properties that were put in wrong, and, where our laundromat, hotel and, the, Chinese restaurateur was all put as vacant, and I contacted, Mackenzie Municipal Planning and told them, I think you got it one block over, that space is being used, so they looked at the map and they found two other errors and they corrected it at the same time. I just happened to notice those on that map.
All right. Eagle eyes. So, first reading, any other questions? All in favor? Motion is carried. Another motion? Councillor Long?
My council set a public hearing date for December 13, 2016 at 6:30 p.m.
Any questions or concerns? This is a public hearing, do councillors attend or? Oh, yeah.
is this just before our next regular meeting?
Correct.
Cause we've changed that date, right? Okay.
Oh, okay. So that's why we will be attending.
I could be late.
is there a time on that one?
6:30.
6:30. Okay, so it's half hour before.
Normally, public hearings are usually held at the beginning, just before a council meeting in most municipalities. That way, council is already there, they just show up early. And what some municipalities do, which you may wanna do here also, is that they'll actually get everybody together at 6 and provide supper.
For the town? Boy, your budget.
Anybody by the name of Brian?
Any Brian will do.
Well, I recommend our
Anyone that doesn't have to pay property tax, I think that's,
That would not be any Brian.
I just want to know,
But your name's not Brian. I pay property taxes.
So this gets advertised,
Yes.
and do we put it, are we doing any, audiovisual aids or whatever for people? Are we doing any stands?
Is there Avant coming and he's gonna have his slideshow?
For a public hearing, normally, he is here and prepared to answer any questions. I'm not sure if he'll have a slideshow or not. That'll be depending if council requests it or if he thinks it should be done. I can't ask Havana at the present time because he's on vacation till the 28th of November, the 3rd of December. Anyways, I call.
Not the 3rd of December. He's got a meeting on the 2nd.
Okay, so he's gone on vacation anyways, because when I did call him, I spoke to Tom instead of Van. But I'm sure that he'll present it whichever you like. But I do know that for advertising purposes, we will have a copy on the website and a copy available here for anybody to access and look at for the public.
So I'm thinking for,
displays, if he could pick a couple of maps, perhaps that might help some of the, if there's any interest, Councillor Vanessa?
I'm a little bit wondering about the idea of the time, like 6:30 gives half hour. I mean, we might have somebody show up. I mean, it's possible that we'll have somebody show up. So maybe we should be doing
Can you
it
come?
earlier, I don't know. And then if we get done, then we do something else for a bit, but I don't know. Do we think we'll get people for this? Do they get people coming out for MVPs?
For any public hearing, whether it's for a land use bylaw, for an MVP, for whatever, you run the risk of having 10 people show up with a lot of controversy and you have, or maybe nobody showing up or one person with one question, you never ever know.
So if it went past 7, what happens with our council if we're supposed to start at 7? That's why I'm thinking we might wanna make it earlier on that date as opposed to 6:30. Maybe we started at 6. I don't know.
You do know no one's going to come, right?
Not necessarily.
And,
I
you know,
mean, this is,
it
No,
all
for sure,
depends
we
on
can
the
maybe just
council
change the
and
time and that way
whether
we just
advertise it well. It's up to us to invite
allow the
people.
time.
We advertise it.
No, but it's up to us to personally invite people and let them know how important it is. Your peeps. Yes, all my peeps, both your drivers.
who made the motion?
The motion was in here.
Councillor Long, do you want to change the time at all, or do you think 6:30 is?
Yeah, we can do 6. I don't mind at all. Friendly amendment. Yeah.
So it'll be that Brian buying supper now, it sounds like.
6.
Amendment 6,
And 6.
I can see Brian's point though. I mean, it's the only meeting we have of the month
mm-hmm.
for council. So it's a very smart idea of his.
Well,
6 o'clock.
we might end up, here, it's not, it's December 13th, isn't it?
I'll bring my tennis racket, right? And we can practice for the senior games down the hall.
Racquetball.
We'll bring a deck of cards and we'll
Really?
practice our euchre.
And what is military whist?
Yeah.
Put the Legion and find out.
I can't change it, I'm gonna be here at 6:30.
So 6 o'clock, and if there's a lot of people, and we push our council meeting back, then should we have an alternate date, just in case that we have to carry our meeting over to another date?
I would recommend that your council meeting start at 7 because anybody coming to council meeting will expect it to start at 7. And if you have to postpone the public hearing, you can have a second public hearing. That would be my recommendation.
So do you wanna pick an alternate second public hearing date then?
No, we could,
According to our organizational meeting, we have to have the 20th open for these situations, because that's the 3rd Tuesday of the month, according to organizational meetings.
I was just wondering what day that was.
Yep.
So that's the 3rd Tuesday, and it's supposed to be held open. Okay. We can start our meeting at 7, unless we see enough response, then I guess it's up to the chair with the input of councillors as to whether we wanna delay our council meeting, so.
Should we make special invitation to the committee, MPC committee? Like Mr. Waco and to Ron and to, the
Well,
guys who are there.
MPC committee should be here.
We should tell them.
No, we should inform them that this is, so that they,
Because they worked on this.
that's right.
They're gonna have to answer all the questions.
Michael's gonna answer all of them, because it's only meetings.
Could you make sure that the committee members are invited for 6 o'clock?
On December the 13th.
For December 13th at 6 p.m.
Would you like supper to be provided?
Now let's vote on this motion first. All in favor? 6 o'clock, December 13th. Okay, so your question is, do we want supper to be provided? Soup and sandwiches where we can put them in the other room and go out and anybody who wants to have a soup and a sandwich and then come back in. That obviously means if nobody shows up, the
If we
committee
tell
members-
them there's food, maybe they'll come.
Bring through.
So we're supplying food for everyone.
All 5 people.
That's difficult when you don't know how many.
Ken will bring over
we can think about it, leave it right now, cause or you're gonna
Oh, she's
advertise
gonna
right away.
advertise it right away.
I have to advertise it.
Well,
Is he back? And how bad is coming?
but you don't know for sure about that yet.
Van will be available on that day, and if we tell him a different time, he'll make sure to be there a different time, I'm sure.
We're paying him. More than
maybe-
value for your
I
dollar.
think 6 is better, just because if you're off work, you can come. I know it, people that have gotta go feed their kids, you know, there's pros and cons, but at least it's available to everybody if they wanna come.
Or for more
If you
people.
make it at 2 o'clock, people that are working can't come.
Okay. What was the decision? Provide supper, soup and sandwiches?
No, we
It's up to
just,
you guys.
the motion.
There was no motion
There was
yet,
no motion.
just direction if you guys.
Can just have the fire barbecue open.
It would be a direction to have soup and
Yeah.
sandwiches.
I'll bring my
I think
kids
it's
over
true.
to eat hot dogs at your place.
Yep.
You know, we're inviting members at large and then we're trying to get counselors that are leaving directly from work to come, so.
And if there's hardly anybody here, they can partake also. The committee members certainly. All right, next item. CAO report. Would you like to give it to CAO report? Can I get a motion, please? Councilor Gilroy?
Okay, I make a motion that, I can find it, there we go, that we receive the CAO Brian Martinson's written report and action list for information.
Is there anything you wish brought to our attention?
No, but I have read it and I'm familiar with most items, so if you have any questions, I think I should be able to answer them.
Questions? Does not appear to be any questions. All in favor?
Well, you know what, I'm just looking, cause it ties on to here, it'll be just, that we were doing the, CAO's performance review, and we had, Nancy did it, and then it wasn't in a form that would have added up the totals, so I redid the form,
Should we do
I
that?
got the email.
You did.
Yeah.
yeah, so
So we're all set
And
on
you
the 15th.
typed everything that was already submitted or what?
I don't know what was submitted, so.
Was anything submitted?
I just, was there stuff submitted?
I was done.
Oh,
No, I didn't.
I think I did not.
okay, no, I didn't know
So I guess
anybody
you have
was
to
gonna.
retype whatever you did. You snooze, you snooze, you're ahead of the game.
Peter.
But I just wanted people to know that that's out there.
Blame it on him.
Thank you.
Debbie,
And we did
I
vote,
could
and that
if you
motion
come in, I
was
could probably
carried.
get it all for you.
Checklisting for council, could I get a motion on that? Councilor Rose?
The council received the checklisting for council October 12th to October 25th, 2016 for information.
All those in favor? And the next item is the written report from the mayor. You can have the report in front of me. Do you have any questions? And if not, I will my report for information.
Can I ask you one question?
Yep.
About the sports central equipment donation. We were discussing it with minor hockey today and they don't really have very much information yet. They said it's slightly bad timing, which is unfortunate for them for this hockey season, so, but they would still like to sort of be able to participate. Like, have you made contact with,
I will turn that to Councilor Gilroy because of his enthusiasm in ensuring that our regional partners are involved. That's what it says.
Thank you. Actually, I'm in the midst of, working on the format for that. I know that,
so yes, you didn't get
we
a
haven't,
copy?
we haven't put all the forms out there yet. I still need permission from the town to have a drop-off box in the town office. And we're drafting the letter to the different organizations that will be involved, according to the rules that we are given by Sports Central.
Who are you working with?
Right now, we're looking at a couple of people, but no one's fully signed on yet, so.
Tom DeShangle?
Tom and I had discussions on it, and I've had discussions with a couple of people in town. We're we're trying to do, we're not overly committed, which is making it a little more difficult than we thought. But, there's been a flurry of meetings and that, so we're hoping to get it up really fairly soon. I'll have to apologize for that.
So we're still looking for like a coordinator of the program, is that what you're saying?
We're looking for, one or two more people to be on sort of a, we'll call it an organizational committee that doesn't have to put in a lot of hours once it's done. A lot of it's really getting the foundation in place, because we can hand out the equipment tomorrow, but the problem is, we are accountable for everything, and it's a long-term project, it's not just this hockey season. They will, when the seasons change over, they will supply us with things for other seasonal stuff. So, we maybe take a little longer to get it set up, but that foundation has to be there so that all the participating, partners, know what's happening and the process in there.
Okay.
And as you know, process is the hardest part of anything getting it done.
Okay. So that's basically it. And he has a small group that he's working with to design a process that is going to meet the needs of the surrounding communities as well as our own. And you're right, hockey is well advanced, but I'm thinking that in the regional communities around us, they haven't even got their outdoor rinks in, and that's where some of this equipment will be going is to them for their outdoor rink.
Yeah, a lot of it is also getting the right people on the different First Nation councils and the Métis. I've got some contacts, but we have to make sure we get the right people who will take it on for their particular band or settlement as well. It's not just our local little area. So it's a little more complicated than I thought it would be. I admit that.
Okay, any other questions regarding my report? All in favor of receiving for information? It's carried. Councillor Donati is not here. Councillor Gilroy?
Mine's more of a verbal one. I'm a little busy. Pretty much, a lot of it's the same ones that the mayor's already alluded to, that we have been involved with. I'm just gonna put a couple that weren't involved. You heard me talk about being at the Alberta 55 Plus organizational meeting at the Legion on the 3rd, and of course, the mayor and Councillor Vanessa, we were at the community engagement session for AHS yesterday, and the usual things we did as a group, budget workshops, things like that. So I think that's it, because we've only been there, it's been 2 weeks since last one, and I think I mentioned all the rest of the multiple meetings, because I mentioned 13 last time. So I think I slowed down a little bit here. So I move my verbal report
For information.
for information purposes.
Is there any questions or any comments for Councillor Gilroy? All in favor? It's carried. Councillor Long?
Working on, as people are probably aware, created a discussion with ESSO. I took it upon myself, because I didn't want, if there's some negative, really negative stuff from ESSO, bring it on to me, I don't mind, but I didn't wanna give council that same brush stroke. As it turned out, the discussions with ESSO regarding the brownfield has taken a bit of a positive note, I suppose, insofar as at least they're discussing it. The decades of Valicia for $1, that was still their initial opening discussion. The discussion now has gone to, well, we could lease it for $1 for 10 years. That way, any work that does get put on it, you get value for it, and bang for your buck. It would give you a park or a green space or whatever gets decided on, something for the town to enjoy for the next 10 years. The other side to it, of course, is that it's prime real estate. And if we want them if we wanna look at it as a real estate proposition, then we need to get them to fix it. We need them to get them to clean it up, and that takes ministerial. You have to talk to the Department of Environment and to the gas regulator or energy regulator and get them involved to get them to clean it up. Their comment has been and still is that High Prairie's not on their radar. That there's a 3 to 5 year plan. Don't know exactly where we're at in that 3 to 5 years. And I said, well, your 3 to 5 years is, if you're going on a 3-year sort of plan, it's been 18 years, so we've missed 6 of them. And where are we at in getting this thing fixed? I guess what we sort of need to know, or certainly what ESSO needs to know, is what's the will of council? What do we want to have happen? Do we want to see that lot cleaned up, which is going to be, I'm thinking probably $500,000-600,000 at least to get that whole site cleaned up and the remediation work. They could quite easily, if the contamination is going underneath the ground now and underneath the roadway. So it's a big project. They don't want to do it. Pretty clear about that. It's not in the plan. It's a property. And so they had money when it was $140 a barrel. I got no sympathy for them. They got money. Their dividends split, and they gave 5% share increase. So they need to get it fixed. That being said, I would like to put pressure on them to get it fixed and then give the land to us. We've put up with it for 20 years. Historically, they don't do that. They fix, they sell. But we gotta get them to fix it if we wanna go that road first. They're more than willing to provide crush and topsoil and sod to get it fixed and get it set up for us to create a green space out of it for the next 10 years. Or we pressure them and it's gonna be a fight because they don't wanna do it. It's not in the plan. They're not on their radar. I think we just need to make them on the radar.
Councillor Gilroy.
This may not be that popular, but my take on this would be, instead of going after a fight here, they still have to check it out every so often, I believe every year, according to what we've heard in the brownfields. I'd like to see at least a 10-year with another option, so we can have possible longevity, with a reasonable amount if they decide that suddenly they want to flip it, that it's going to be a fair amount of notice for us, so that it's not suddenly, you have 3 weeks to take your stuff off. I want to, this is a 10 years with an option for us to renew at the same amount. And then if they're going to suddenly flip it for some reason, then to give us what the council would think would be an adequate amount of notice and or compensation for the removal of stuff we have in place.
One of the things that I suggested to them, that I put forward to Chad Grumman, when he was talking about, you could put whatever you wanted on there as a park, but we have a 30-day, normally or historically, it's the word they keep using, 30-day notice, and then they come in and they start cleaning up. Again, my argument was that it's not fair to us if we invest our time and our money and get the park being used, and then all of a sudden we fall into your 3 to 5 year plan in a couple of years, and then we gotta tear it all apart again. So that's where the 10-year stint came in, that they wouldn't touch it for 10 years. Meanwhile, you still have an environmental catastrophe over there that needs to be fixed, and we shouldn't leave it to our kids to fix it up or our grandkids to fix it up. It's been 20 years since they touched that, and they have no intention of touching it for the next foreseeable future. So how do we want to do it? I'm up for a fight, but I think we need to either force them to fix it or go for a long-term lease.
Counselor Rose?
If we actually supported this 10-year lease and did some work over there, would we not be responsible for any environmental issues that would relate to, I'm hanging out in a gazebo or I'm planting a garden on contaminated land? Because probably it's contaminated, and I know we do that above ground, right? But if there was, anybody decided that they wanted to sue us, because we are the ones that are doing the work, so whatever's there is ours, would that be then our responsibility?
It's no different than the brownfield site where the Vulcan had their big solar panels. They would top it off, they would get it ready for usage, but we'd be using that much. We wouldn't be building anything down, we wouldn't be digging in, the crush that they would have and the topsoil was top and the sod, that's our base to work on. So we wouldn't be disturbing any of the contaminants, and it's still their property, so therefore they're still liable.
Okay, this could be an agenda item for another meeting.
Well, that was my point,
where
is we need to,
So-
it's not an agenda item to go over here, and we can get more information. Like, the update was good to know that, there's still
Yeah.
options out there, but
And
it's a whole discussion, and you're right, we need to get council's direction, because there are two ways of looking at this, right?
exactly, and so I'll put it into a request for decision, and with the two options, green space 10-year lease, force them to fix it up, and then go from there. And then from there, we can at least have a position to take back to ESSO and or to take back to the government and say,
Do you want this for a December meeting, or do you want it into January?
There's a
December's
November,
getting punched up pretty good here.
there's a November meeting, a December meeting.
I know, but November is getting punched too, and so is December, maybe January.
Well, when Michael gets it down too, though, like, 'cause
Yeah, and so yeah, I will,
Okay, so it could be a January item.
yeah.
All right, okay, thank you very much. Can you move your report for, is there anything else that you want to say?
Aside from I apologize, Brian, because it's not normally my nature, and I didn't mean to be so abrupt and rude, so I'm sorry. So,
When?
most of the time, yeah. So, that's all I have for verbal report, and I move my verbal report for acceptance from this.
All in favor? It's carried. Councillor Panasic?
No report.
No report. Councillor Portly?
Just a quick verbal. Attended my very first intermunicipal meeting, October 28th. It was a good meeting. Mayor Cox hit a few of the highlights in her written report, so you guys have all read that. I was there. I was there. It was awesome. It was fantastic. I'm glad you missed it. We had a rec board meeting today, earlier today. So, the first one, the appointed, positions, I guess. Hey?
you again, the chair.
Oh, yeah, I'm still the chair. I tried to pass it, but.
Yeah, usually they rotate.
Because they didn't want to give the experiments.
Well, I said I hadn't done it long enough.
Never stopped it.
They said I wasn't very good, I gotta keep going, good, I'll get better at it. Anyway, so that happened today, we had, an update from the Aquatic Center, cause they started their turnaround, beginning of November, which is, they're flying at it, and, the dust is flying, and we had a little inspection, looked around, and all the beams have been cut out and being replaced, and the grouting, the grinding of the grouting is going on, so it's everything's just happening at once. There's one issue with the beams, they had to take out more beams than expected, which actually incurred a little bit more cost. everything was put back in, and it'll look really good when it's done. They're a giver, that's for sure.
The grouting, there was an issue as to whether he was going to be able to get it done in time?
While we think it'll be done in time. They're still grinding out the old grout in a lot of the wading pool and the small pools and stuff. The big pool, it doesn't look like there's gonna be as much having to be done now that the water's out and we've done a full inspection. But
They're gonna wait though, to do.
yeah, they got a week or so. They're just about to the point where they're gonna do a clean down tonight. I mean, they're gonna clean all the dust, clean it all up tonight so that tomorrow morning, I think they're gonna start grouting.
So just give a shout out to the staff.
Big shout out to the staff, our staff, the arena staff, or not, the swimming pool staff. They put in a pile of work and labor in there, so, and then done great work, so.
Councillor Gilbert?
I'm just wondering, I know that when we get roads done, there's contingency amount put into the budget for it. For some things, like the budget amounts that you were talking about for the rec board, was there a contingency amount put in there because of the way you just talked about something, an extra beam coming out, and I'm thinking, when we actually have to deal with, anything to do with the museum or things like that, shouldn't we have some sort of contingency in there so that suddenly, we're not gonna be suddenly hit with another bill that we're not ready for?
I believe this is the rec board budget, not ours.
But it still comes back to us having to pay for any extra, at least half of it.
But the town does put $50,000 away per year in more or less a contingency fund for recreation.
So there is,
Capital. Capital.
for
Okay,
capital,
no.
which
This is a capital project.
And what I'm saying is, when we do contracts like this, I'm thinking that all our contracts, if we're doing any sort of repair work, should have a contingency placed within the contract itself when we budget for it, before we approve it.
They don't have a contingency because this is done by day labor, so they haven't really, given, I don't think they gave the recreation board an actual breakdown as to this is how much the grouting person is, this is how much the, staffing is costing. They just go ahead and do it. But it is something that perhaps the recreation board could look at.
I'm just asking what's the policy.
Yeah, there was funds put aside or budgeted for the renovations and the slide, fixing the slide and fixing the beams. There was funds put aside, but it was only at a number that was gone off an estimate, basically. So, but
So
there was.
shutdown is 20,000, and that's supposed to cover everything plus contingency.
Okay.
Okay.
So anyways, it is coming along really well. The work was just flying out over there today, so, she figures that it's on schedule.
I did have one question
Yeah.
regarding the intermunicipal. And I think, Ryan, were you at the intermunicipal last time? No, so it was just you and me.
You may have.
Okay, do you remember when the discussion was, talking about the, doctor retention and,
Yes.
recruitment and retention? And the fact that, the concern was brought forward by Connie McKee from the Health Advisory Council, that the two municipalities should take more of an interest, or more of a, should partake more in the doctor retention.
Correct.
And the motion that ended up out of that was that we would, each of us set aside $2,500 for some kind of an event, which we're
For multiple events,
really
yeah.
not sure what it was gonna be, but
Yeah.
it's gonna be in the budget. So there was, and it did not appear that the county was interested in actually forming a doctor retention committee. They were more interested in leaving it with the Health Foundation.
Yeah, there's, well, the board, they had what's the foundation? It consists of.
High Prairie Community Health Foundation.
That's right, that's what they were leaning towards, was leaving it with them.
Okay, so there was discussion at this community engagement, yesterday, and Councillor Gilroy,
There's some suggestion, that, and it's not, been officially put forward yet, that, that another committee, and I'm not sure whether it's going to be a town directed one or not, be there to, better recruit and retain, the doctors. I was just informed by someone, because I hadn't been there, I wasn't there for the rest of the meeting, but I've informed of that. But I will make it, known to this council that, since I was approached with it, in regard to that possibility, that if something does fully transpire before anything is done, I will consult with this council.
It just seems like they had left it as not going to be a committee, and now it might be a committee,
Yeah.
but it's up in the air, so.
Yeah, they were kind of leaning towards, that committee doing, or the funding, we're gonna have the funds saved for that committee to have, multiple family functions
It might be
more for their spouses and children.
It sounds like retention is our bigger issue right
Retention
now.
is.
Yeah.
And
it's just-
actually recruitment, and I think
That's right.
that's what's been happening in the past, is we're doing not a bad job of recruiting,
Yeah.
but we're not really dealing with retention, and we're not dealing with the families, we're not dealing with the spouses as well as we were.
Exactly, and that's what that was directed to have the spouses and families included, and have a little function, whether it's a barbecue out back, whatever we're doing here, to welcome them and have them feel welcome.
Okay, so that's just an
But
information.
it may actually be strictly out of the foundation of.
Mine did too. I'm just letting you know, it was a discussion item
Okay,
at
good.
the intermunicipal, so
It was.
keep that in mind,
It was, and we put, it was $2,500,
Yeah.
was it? Yeah,
it's in the budget
you bet.
discussions.
Okay,
Could you move your, is there
I
any
will.
other?
any other, no, that's good, I move my, verbal report for information.
All in favor? And Councillor Rose.
I have a written report on a variety of things, and then did attend the rec board meeting, but I'll report on that next. Councillor Gilbert?
I just want to actually, applaud Councillor Rose on, her participation at the financial fair. I enjoyed being over there as well, and my daughter picked up some swag. And I didn't put it in my report that I was there, but, I think it was well done. And I appreciated the dedication Councillor Rose had to being there for longer than me, and keeping away from all those extra pierogies.
I know I ate 2 plates of pierogies while I was there. They were quite fabulous, but they even brought pierogies home. Nice.
I know they were good when
I was committed to the pierogies.
Fundraising for the community.
Yep. Administration?
I was just wondering if that financial fair is gonna be an annual thing?
They're hoping to, and to expand on it, so.
Okay, I had one question, if no one else has a question, regarding, LSLEA and the meeting, I believe, on November 17th.
Did I get it wrong?
No,
Okay.
I'm just letting, you know that I'm wondering if, the organization will be asking for a letter of support from the town.
The
The
LSLA,
LSLEA.
do you think that will happen? Did anybody read my report? Because I know that, you know.
Spelled development wrong, but that's okay.
Oh yeah, you're right, development, that's good, I just saw that word. So with LSLEA, we did meet with, the minister, and we are trying to, sort of apply to her to look at the fact that the funding has been turned down. So quite possibly that that material will be too limited, that LSLA will be looking for a letter of support to be able to go forward. I mean, this initiative that, the mayor provided us tonight, which was their broadband initiative, we're only gonna be able to go partway into that program before we're gonna have to close the doors on that, and, you know, it would be really nice to be able to see things out. Ultimately, and I kind of tried to speak to that when we talked to Danielle and as well in here, is that we're sort of getting a sense that because the group's direction has changed slightly and the
municipal support, which really isn't, is First Nations and Métis organizations, even though our membership is good and the amount of money that now we've brought to the table in matching minimums is adequate. It seems to be that they don't like the idea that our municipalities aren't structured within the MGA. They're not other communities like Donnelly and Blair, right? They're Peavine and Driftpile and Sucker Creek, and they don't give them the same status. Mm-hmm.
They should tell that to their face, see if they say that.
So we did mention to Danielle that we weren't very happy with the way it was looking, and that they should take a hard look at the fact that this group has been successful at actually bringing more of those partners to the table, and have sort of made some great strides forward in that collaboration of working with municipalities and First Nation and Métis. And their turning down the funding is shutting the door on that, and it's going to leave that totally open and void in the middle of our area.
Yeah, and I think that really accurately reflects, probably better than in a long, long time, it accurately reflects the points of view of our politicians in Edmonton and South. They don't get it. They don't understand the demographics and the makeup of our community. And they want us to have partnerships and working relationships with other communities. The other communities are 50 kilometers away, some more. That's our closest one is Donald and McLennan. And so when they stop and look at that and then realize that East Prairie and Peavine and Gift Lake and Sucker Creek, they're our neighbors and they're our friends and they are the people who support our community. So they're logically going to be a part of the groups that we.
They're our best alliance, right? So why wouldn't we?
And then
want
they
to
say
support
they don't
them?
hold them in the same status? Wow. That's
Well,
some
Danielle was
arrogance
very
right
supportive,
there.
and so.
Talk is cheap.
Yeah. So
Councillor
we'll,
Gilman?
I was just gonna follow up what the mayor said. Your meeting's on the 17th, you said. Our next meeting's on the 22nd. If you could find out, if they want letter support, I would love to have it on the agenda so we can give the support to such a great group as that.
What's the, like you say, no funds to operate in January 17th, so are you saying that January 1, the doors get
Probably January 30th. There will be just a kind of gradual wind down. We'll finish the broadband, we'll get that done. But we can't do any more projects, and they're only small projects, but they are ones that the community's asked for. So,
and like I said, the one thing that they are doing is they're bringing these players to the table. You're sitting around with all in this last year building these relationships with these First Nation partners and Métis partners. That there's an element of trust there. That again, the government's going to come in and wipe it out, and they're going to go back to their little necks of the wood. Like we've been able to help them secure funding in other areas too, like with that program out of
Katis Canal, KTC Family and Community Support Services does a camp at Otter Lake, and I think next year they're doing it at Cadott Lake. But it's a huge youth camp, and we've asked them to put some entrepreneurial aspect into it. And then we ended up, the federal government gave them $25,000 with our letter of support, saying that this is a good youth camp.
Right.
Cultural, traditional, and entrepreneurial skills. So
yeah, just sort of help them get some funding for that, which was helpful, and now they're going to be expanding that. And we've got Wabasca's. Well, they've been a member, and I guess they are a municipality as well.
Yeah. But Wabasca is very, very supportive. The Grand Chief of the First Nations across the KGC, Katis Canal Tribal Council.
Great.
I mean, that's the Grand Chief. That's 5 First Nations that have come to the table and said, we want to work with you. So I'm really getting, I was getting really excited again over this and saying, we have got some good partnerships. Look what we managed to do because of building these relationships with getting Tolko.
Exactly.
To get all these people in
to come because the town of High Prairie asked, and they knew us as people, which we didn't have before. So it's taken us 3 years really to get these, well, but to accept our calls even.
Even that's it, I told Danielle, I said, you know, we've been part of regional collaboration and intermunicipal and all these other groups, and we've tried to set a stage to improve some of these relationships, and this group is slowly working its way, and it actually is because we lost some of the municipal partners, right? So Slave Lake jumping out and some of those bigger players jumping out of the alliance, which is what started the government's end to the program, right? Their idea that this alliance isn't functional, and I think they've really just made the alliance jump through a lot of hoops, extreme hoops. I mean, we've got a really airtight strategic plan that I don't think any other alliance has in place, and it still wasn't good enough for them. But anyway, these other players, like a lot of our First Nation partners are there, I think because finally they have a voice. Because when you have High Prairie and Big Lake County and Slave Lake there, even High Prairie sits back, right? Because Slave Lake's got all these big ideas and they're pushing their ideas, and all of a sudden Slave Lake's out of it. So it's High Prairie and Gift Lake and Drift Pile and Peabody and Wabasca, and where everybody's voice is being heard. But anyway, we'll see what happens going forward.
I do have one announcement, the Toco opening. Yes.
Oh, my report for information.
All in favor?
Yep.
The meeting is now adjourned.